Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time of day it is. Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Dr. Don. For your first-time viewers out there, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of one-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like most of you out there about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals and about whatever it is we've decided to talk about. And this evening's show is Beyond Energy. Energy and beyond. Energy and beyond. Lord's laughing at me.
Beyond energy, that's good too.
My guests this evening are Lloyd Morbett and Arnie Panich. And it'll be interesting to see if these two guys get along all evening because I love both of them, and I don't stretch that when I say that. You're both beautiful human beings, and your life has been one of dedication to service and justice. So I'm so glad to have you on at the same time.
We won't get along. With that introduction.
Thanks for coming on. Yeah. And how are you feeling this evening, Lloyd?
Well, I'm here, ready to go.
Okay. Enough said. How about you, Arnie?
Couldn't be better.
Can I call you Creole, Arnie?
You can call me anything you want.
Creole, Arnie, that's interesting.
He aggravates me all the time because I claim to be Creole and he calls himself Creole and everybody else in the world Creole.
Ah.
Arnie's bad.
How do you get to be Creole? Is this something good?
That's another show. So we're going to have a good time this evening, I am sure. Energy and beyond. As you know, the show goes in two major segments. The first segment is the bio segment where I ask you questions about who you are personally so the viewers get a chance to know where you're coming from when you say things in the second half. And the second half is when we talk about energy and beyond or whatever else that may come up. It's not that structured, okay?
Okay.
So let's do a little bio stuff on the two of you. Let's start with you, Arnie, a few words, a few minutes or so about who you are. We won't go into the full display of bio, but just an overview. Who is Arnie Panich?
Arnie Panich is the proud son of Detroit, Michigan.
Wow.
Arnie Panich was educated in public schools in Michigan, and I was a social work professor at two universities for 25 years. I'm married and I have 3 children.
Mm-hmm. And what do you spend your time doing now?
Well, my last gainful employment was in Boise, Idaho, and I've lived in Portland 10 years. And now, well, I serve on 3 committees of TriMet.
Wow.
I serve the Humanists of Greater Portland as MC and in the program committee. I am active in my neighborhood, Hillsdale Neighborhood Association.
That's in the Portland metro area?
Yes, City of Portland.
City of Portland.
I think that's probably what I'm mostly doing.
Say what TriMet is for the viewers in other parts of the world.
TriMet is our transit agency. It serves 3 counties of Northwest Oregon, Multnomah, Washington, and Clackamas County. And it's a combination of streetcars and buses and light rail transit trains in our metro. It gets us to where we need to go.
And you like to travel a lot?
I do. We've done a lot of international traveling over the years. I have been in 75 countries.
Can you believe that? 75 countries. And you always come back with a strange headgear from where they're wearing in that country. I never know what you're going to wear next.
Yes, I have a collection of hats.
All right.
Thank you.
Shall we approach Lloyd for a minute?
Of course.
Lloyd, it's your turn. You're on the hot seat now.
Okay.
Tell us about you.
Well, I was born in Columbus, Ohio in 1947. I grew up mainly in upstate New York. I graduated from high school, and my father took me down to a recruiting station and joined me up in the United States Navy, which was kind of his military pattern. He'd been in the Army Air Corps in World War II. And I spent a year out of my 4 years in the Navy, and I quit. I went to Vietnam. I came back. I did a year of college on the GI Bill, and was so interested in my own pursuit of knowledge, that I spent a lot of time reading about the history of Vietnam, and I ended up dropping out of college after a year, and decided to leave New York and go somewhere else, and came to Oregon by accident in 1969. Seemed like everybody's arms were open. I stayed here. I started out by getting involved in the anti-war movement, and then in the course of trying to understand why there was so much violence in the world, my partner, who was at the time pregnant with our daughter, picked up a book called Perils of the Peaceful Atom. She read the book, became very agitated about it, gave it to me, I read it, and it changed my life. I got about 6 chapters into that book. My eyes were becoming open about all the problems of the nuclear fuel cycle, and I was aware that they were building the Trojan nuclear plant, and I said to her in the kitchen of this little house that we were in, I looked up from the book about 6 chapters in and said to her, you know, if they build Trojan, I think maybe we ought to go to Canada. And she agreed with me. And I turned the page over, and the title of the next chapter was Don't Bother Running. And it changed my life.
Say a few words about what the Trojan nuclear plant is and where it's located.
Well, the Trojan nuclear plant is no longer in existence.
Yes, you shut it down.
But ironically, well, I helped shut it down. It was 50 miles from Portland, up the on the Columbia River, going towards just past St. Helens. Mm-hmm. It was a plant that was built by Portland General Electric in 1975, and it operated. I went through a number of initiative campaigns to try and shut the plant down, and I lost all of them. And then the utility threw in the towel in January of 1993, and they permanently shut the plant down. And now what's on that site, they blew up the cooling tower. We were talking about that here just a little while ago. Mm-hmm. I think it was in 2006. They blew up the reactor building, I think it was in 2008. And all the waste, all those years of waste that were produced at Trojan from 75 to 93 sit on that plant site in dry casts,
storage,
very close to the Columbia River, waiting for the nuclear garbage man to come take it away, and it hasn't happened, of course. So
you are indeed a troublemaker.
I was accused of that a number of times.
Yeah.
I think I was being a representative for life in trying to stop what I saw as the Vietnam War come home, and that's why I became active. I realized that I couldn't go to Canada because the next chapter talked about how there was really no place to run. It's like, for instance, one of the things I remember described in there graphically, which I knew a little about because I'd read Rachel Carson's book Silent Spring, mm-hmm. was the fact that they measured the blood of Eskimos in Alaska that had intense amounts of DDT in their bloodstreams, and it had come from the agricultural runoff that had circulated in the water, picked up in the flesh of the animals in the sea, and then gone into the bodies of the Eskimos that ate those animals. And so it was like, even though I'd already been halfway around the world, I'd gone to Vietnam, I suddenly realized, it's a closed life support system, and I got to do something about this. And what I thought is I'd find out if it was true. And so I spent, it must have been a couple years reading everything I could find out about nuclear power, and the more I read, the less I liked. And then I taught myself administrative law and became an activist.
And what an activist you've been, all over the place. So what are you doing now in your spare time? You don't have any gainful employment, do you?
Well, I do have gainful employment. I'm now, as I said, I'm 66 years old. I'll turn 67 in July. I'm going to retire if there's anything left of Social Security, at least as far as that goes. Um, the work that I do is I'm the executive director of a foundation called the Oregon Conservancy Foundation, which was founded in 1992. It was born out of a lawsuit against Portland General Electric and Pacific Power and Light over the construction, the illegal, passing on the illegal costs of constructing the nuclear plants that they wanted to build in the Pacific Northwest. And I happened to meet an attorney who I think is probably one of the more brilliant lawyers that I have ever met, by the name of Dan Meek, who
Dan Meek.
yeah, he took on those cases and he prevailed, and that's what allowed the utility eventually threw in the towel, and they financed the foundation that I work for. So that's what allowed me to keep going. But I'm at that point now where I feel my age. It's been a lot of water over the dam, so to speak, over time.
You bet.
So what I have been doing is when Trojan was shut down in '93, I began to become interested in two things. One, of course, was the problems with campaign finance reform. I'd spent a lot of time in the legislature. I was sick and tired of seeing how Portland General Electric controlled legislation in the legislature along with a bunch of other corporations. And I wanted to see campaign finance reform enacted. The other thing that I started to do is I started to read everything I could about global warming, because there were people talking about it, and it was just like nuclear power. I wanted to know if it was for real. So now my partner Kathy and we have been involved in the various proposals to export coal, to export natural gas, to export oil. In fact, this region is starting to look like a third world country, and now all the resources here want to be shipped out and sent over to China so they can continue to burn coal to manufacture all the products that we end up buying back here in this country. I mean, it's just craziness. And, we need to leave fossil fuels in the ground, and we need to shut down the nuclear power plants that we've got, and we need to make a massive commitment to renewable energy, and we need to bring back equality in this country, and we need to find a way to take the power that is concentrated in the hands of the 1% and take it back into our hands as sovereign people, all of us together.
You said it all, brother. Now, what are you doing personally regarding these things you just mentioned now that I agree with you wholeheartedly?
I just recently finished a presentation at the Unitarian Church. I participated in a panel discussion on Fukushima. I've been following the Fukushima plant. Like I say, Kathy and I have been involved in appearing at a number of licensing hearings regarding coal export terminals and oil terminals, and again, there's this rush to take everything out of this country, and I still continue to educate myself about these problems.
Who's this person, Kathy, you keep talking about and pointing at?
Oh, that's my partner, Catherine Chetty.
Yeah.
She's bashful. I try to get her to sit next to me, but it's just impossible.
Next time we'll get her up there. We'll work on it. Yes, Arnie?
So you mentioned Fukushima.
Right.
We can mention Chernobyl as wonderful examples. We can talk about 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania.
Right.
And we can talk about the Holocaust that occurs with nuclear power.
Right.
Now, turn the page and talk to me a little bit about France, which leads the world, or one of the leading world producers of nuclear power. They're building new plants.
Right.
There's this export of their technology. How do we square those two things together? What is it about the disconnect between Fukushima, Japan, and what happened, Chernobyl in Russia, Ukraine, 3 Mile Island right on our own soil,
right,
and this press to keep it up?
Well, France has made itself into a state-run energy operation in the operation of nuclear power plants. They haven't resolved the problem of nuclear waste like any other in fact, no one's resolved the problem of nuclear waste. They're all trying to dig tunnels in the ground and hope to hell that that's where it goes. France hasn't overcome the cost overruns of nuclear power plants, though, because it's a state-run operation, they can suppress a lot of the information regarding the success of their own individual operation. I don't see France being a some kind of an example of how nuclear power is supposed to work. I think that they're on the same trajectory that we are all on. We are, in the United States, we have 99 operating nuclear power plants. Most of them are old. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission's response to these nuclear plants operating is to extend their operating license so they can continue to operate out into the future. What happens, of course, is when you're operating with this old stuff, things begin to go wrong. Things wear out. Nuclear power plants aren't perpetual motion machines. They suffer from the same problems that any kind of energy facility does. You operate the plant for a period of time and you have to replace parts. Again, I just think that it's been an interesting experiment that we've all been involved in, but no one can convince me now, after all the years that I've been looking at this, that this is something that we should continue with. I think the time to extricate ourselves has come, and a classic example of that is a country that's also in the European zone, and that's Germany. Germany is taking themselves out of their involvement in nuclear power, and they were heavily involved too.
Well, I'm going to stop you now because we've got a leap here. We're into the second half of the show.
Oh, we're making a leap.
I got one more question for the two of you before we take a break and then come back to the main part of the show. That USA on your zipper on that jacket there, was that really made in the USA, that jacket you're wearing?
I don't really know, because most of the clothes I wear comes from Goodwill or, one of the,
Second question, has the NSA been tapping you guys' phones?
Oh, I'm sure my phones have probably been tapped. I mean, one time I discovered that for a year that the phone company had been taking my phone records and giving them to the Drug Enforcement Administration without telling me. And the way it worked at that time is that they had to, the Drug Enforcement Administration had to re-up the request every 3 months, and they kept it up for a year. It was the whole time that I was involved in trying to move Teledyne's Huaqiang's low-level radioactive waste off the floodplain of the Willamette River. Mm-hmm. And that company is in business making rare metals, and it has a close association with the federal government. And at that point, I noticed that there was like flyovers going on and stuff like that. So, they were trying to find a way to take me out. I mean, that's what really was in other words, bust me for if I was involved with drugs or something like that. So,
So you gave up drugs at that time then, huh?
I've been awful careful about that, I'll tell you. Awful careful. Of course, I don't have a big interest in drugs. I have more of an interest in justice.
Yes,
and especially economic justice. I think there's a lot of wrong that's happened in this country, and I think it's time to right it. And it's one of the reasons why I want to talk about Hartman's book.
Arnie,
did you ask me about?
Are they after you? Are you on any list?
I'm sure that my phone is tapped. There's no question about it. So I have reduced my use of my phone to ordering pizza. This is all I will use my phone for. If they need to inventory my consumption of pizza, then they'll know how many pepperoni pizzas, how many cheese pizzas, how many vegetarian pizzas for my wife I've ordered. That's the only reason to use my phone.
With that, Mr. E, can we take a break? I can't take any more of this for now. We'll take a break, be back in a few minutes, and go into the main part of the program, Energy and Beyond. Now we're going to take a break here. Hello. The mics are off first. And for you viewers who are just tuning in and who were goofing off when you should have been here at the beginning of the show, Conversations with Dr. Don that you're watching is an ongoing series of one-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like most of you out there about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals and about whatever it is we have decided to talk about. And my guests this evening, Lloyd Morbett and Arnie Panich, have been talking about who they are personally and a little bit about what the second half of the show is going to be about, energy and that sort of a thing. So let's start off formally with you taking the lead because you were an issue.
Well, actually, Arnie has another question.
Okay.
I'm interested.
Yes.
Oh, I see a real connection in your life, having disclosed that you were kind of an organic farmer, and if you're so in tune with the land and the fruit that you grow or whatever you're growing, tell us about the impediments to that in this urban America, this polluted America, this industrial America, as you try to grow the perfect crops on your own land.
I'm a gardener. You know, when we were talking about this earlier, you know, it was mentioned, the word farm was mentioned, and I don't think of where I live so much as a farm, mainly because a lot of the land is forested, and I think that I'm kind of like a steward or a caretaker. In fact, that's how I have lived on this property. Is you know, the man who owned it worked for Bonneville, and when he found out that I was being evicted from the land that I was living on across the river from where his property was, because this executive with, I think it was Crown Zellerback or whatnot, discovered I was an anti-nuclear activist and wanted me off of the property. And this man knew who I was, and he said to me, you can come live on my property under two conditions. One is he says, I know, you know, your work as an anti-nuclear activist, I think it's right on. He says, I want you to continue your work. And the other thing is that everything that you own has to be on wheels. And so it sounded like a deal to me. And I've lived there ever since. And he's since passed away. I took care of his wife. She's passed away. And then in the process, I learned how to care for the land. And there was another thing that impacted my life greatly. And that was when I accidentally came to Oregon. I drove down I-84 and came to Hood River. And I looked on the map and I saw that there was a road a highway you could take that went up over the top of Mount Hood. And it looked to me like that would be an interesting road to take. So I took that turn. And when I took that turn and I started to climb up the road, because the road goes up and, you know, was going into the mountain, there were some signs along the road. A little old man had some signs out. He was selling plums. And I happen to like plums. And I pulled off of the road, and this old man and I got into this long conversation. He had lived all his life in Hood River. He had worked in the lumber mill at Hood River. He did not know how to read or write, which blew me away, because I don't think I'd met anybody up until then that didn't know how to read or write. But he loved his plums, and he'd grown these trees, and every year he harvested his plums, and he put his little sign up by the road, and they were the most delicious fruit that I had ever eaten. And I got to tell you, it's like there was something in my mind that clicked. I just wanted to be like that man. I wanted to be like that man. So when Earl opened up his property to me and I came to live on it, the first thing I did was I started to plant fruit trees. Earl liked trees too. In fact, you know, when my daughter was born, she got to be a young girl, she wanted a horse, and Earl wouldn't let horses on there because they ate the trees. Earl loved trees. He was from Texas. He'd come out of Texas at the same time that Woody Guthrie had. He'd lived during the Depression. He was a sign painter. He'd moved around. He was a really smart man, and for whatever reason, he liked me and he took me in, and I needed it. I really needed it. And so I continued my work as an activist, and I started to experiment planting trees. And then I recently have heard about permaculture, and permaculture is like a big revolution's going on. People are starting to use, grow their own food on urban property, not on 58. I don't have 50 acres worth of garden. I have a small garden. It's not very big at all, but it's big enough to play with and experiment with. And so that's kind of the answer. The answer is that, I'm just learning like everybody else. I'm on this spaceship too, and I'm trying to understand how to live in balance with nature, and not use all those chemicals, and not do that industrial agriculture that is destroying our planet. We need to make changes here, and the beautiful thing is those changes are coming about. Whether it's going to come about in time or not, I don't know. As an anti-nuclear activist, energy and beyond, I want to see the evolution that takes the next step, that takes us away from having to risk our lives with Fukushimas and Chernobyls and 3 Mile Island. I want to see us get out from underneath these fossil fuel overlords that want to, just dig it up out of the ground and send it to wherever they can get rid of it to make a dollar, regardless of what they're sticking into the atmosphere. I mean, we've treated the atmosphere like a landfill. That's what it is. Our atmosphere is a landfill. We've been sticking all this results of fossil fuel burning and crap into the atmosphere as if there was no tomorrow. Well, tomorrow's come. And if we don't make changes, the changes are going to make us.
Did you get an answer, Arnie, or you got a follow-up question?
that puts you on the spot.
There's always another question.
And he's got them, I'll tell you.
So we enjoy the lights in here. We enjoy the electricity.
Yeah.
Give us a roadmap
that
that we can use that is a lot safer and cuts through some of this
Arnie,
nonsense.
I'm glad you mentioned the lights. I've been coming to this studio for probably, has it been around 20 years? This place has been here that long.
A long time.
When I first came here, they had those
incandescent
bulbs. Geez, you get underneath these bright lights, and I'm not kidding you, I would never be able to wear a sweater, be sweating. I mean, it was hot. And now look at these lights. They're filled with LEDs. I bet you the current draw on this is minuscule compared to what those incandescents were doing.
Of course.
We're making the changes. We're sitting under the changes. It's happening. I mean, I ended up, when I first became an anti-nuclear activist, I thought, I got to practice what I preach here, So I decided that I would heat my home with a wood stove, and I would use kerosene lamps. I used kerosene lamps for years. I learned how to balance that out. I didn't like it very well, and then I got that Whole Earth catalog, and they had photovoltaic panels in it, and I bought me some photovoltaic panels, and I learned how to put in some, I started reading about that, and I saw that the panels were real expensive, but if you bought like compact fluorescent 12-volt bulbs, I made a complete 12-volt system, lighting system, and operated all my electronic equipment in my trailer, the whole 9 yards. In fact, I used to feel so good about my trailer, even though it was this old creaky thing that was built the year before I was born. It had 1/4 of an inch of insulation in it. I mean, it was an awful structure. But I felt so good about what I'd done because, like, in the winter, when the big power failures came, there'd be a storm and a branch went down on the line, my lights would come on. I had my recycled nickel cadmium railroad batteries that were providing the power to it. Hey, people, if there's any message I send you out there, it's possible to live your life differently. You don't have to buy into this system that we've been told is the only way that we're supposed to live. The fact of the matter is that there are true alternatives. And the fact of the matter is that if we don't pursue those true alternatives, we really have no choice now. We're off the planet. Mother Earth's getting ready to get rid of us. I mean, we cannot treat the world as a landfill.
You're talking about we, and sometimes it's necessary to determine
do you need to go?
which we we're talking about. So
I'm talking about we, the people.
Yes, of course, of
Right.
course, because that part of the we that includes the super rich, the ruling elite, the corporatists. They don't want people like you doing what you're doing.
Right. Well,
What do we do
it's-
about them?
It's one of the reasons why I think we got the message across that global warming is a problem, nuclear power is a problem. But it's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about Tom Hartman's
Of
book.
course, of course.
I got this book from a wonderful friend of mine who gave it to me for Christmas. And I like Tom Hartman.
Let's hold it up so they can see it.
I like Tom Hartman.
I do too.
Tom's been around quite a while. In fact, one of the first books that I read of Tom Hartman's was a book entitled Unequal Protection, The Rise of Corporate Dominance and the Theft of Human Rights. This book,
It's brilliant.
it's a brilliant book. And I also, at the same time, a year later, Ted Nace, who's another author that I have great respect for, came out with a book called Gangs of America, The Rise of Corporate Power and the Disabling of Democracy. It's these books just tell you the story of how we ended up with corporations gaining sovereign rights like people. It was never intended for corporations, an artificial entity whose only thought of existence is to turn a dollar. I mean, that's it. You know, they're not sitting around thinking about what the hell they're doing to the planet. They're thinking about what they can get away with while they're doing it to the planet.
You're probably on more lists than I thought.
Yeah, probably am. Anyway, these books are great. But Hartman has done it. He's really done it in this book, The Crash of 2016. Because this book, Hartman attempts to basically analyze what has begun in 2008, which Obama unfortunately missed the opportunity to stand up with the power of Roosevelt and attempt to make serious changes, not these ones where you bail out the banks and you keep the big ones, you know, they're so too big to fail, that kind of crap. The fact of the matter is that Hartman basically analyzes the whole the crash that began in 2008, shows that because Obama didn't have the courage, nor the Democrats have the courage to do what was necessary to stop the economic royalists from concentrating power in this country and destroying us further. And now we got another crash coming.
Maybe they decided it wasn't worth the effort because the right wing had seized the Republican Party and the government, and they would have lost had it been a competition.
But they lost anyway.
Yes.
They lost that. I mean, we lost the Congress, but for a while there was that window of opportunity when the Senate was controlled by the Democrats and also the Congress was controlled by the Democrats, and Obama had become president, and everybody thought, oh, this guy is going to do it, and he didn't. What he did was he continued the same policies that Bush did across the board. It wasn't even just the banks. It wasn't even just continuing to bail out the financial casino capitalism that was going down in our midst that caused all this disruption.
So what's going on now is all Obama's fault, right?
Oh, I don't think it's all Obama's fault. Oh, hell no.
Of course
no.
not.
But Obama was not the person to stand up to it. He didn't have. He was a creature of the political system, and he was already supported by the nuclear industry. I knew that before he became president. He got major contributions from the Exelon, which is a company that operates out of Chicago and operates nuclear plants on the East Coast. He was already beholden to the same interests, and yet a lot of people thought, including myself, that there might be an opportunity here that he would take to become something different, like Roosevelt did. Remember, Roosevelt was a member of the one percenters too.
Oh, yes.
He came out of wealth, but he's a man that stood up to the economic royalists because he had to extricate this country out of the dire predicament we were in because of the Depression.
I can feel Arnie. He's got a question
Oh,
that's
Ed,
brewing there.
I'm not the expert on everything. Read the book.
What, Lloyd, what is the way to avoid the crash of 2016, according to Hartman?
Do away with the inequality. Stop the Supreme Court from legislating. The Supreme Court is legislated. They took Citizens United and they finalized what has been a movement on the part of corporations to gain personhood. Now they got, now they can they can operate at will in our elections. If you look at what's happened since Citizens United, there's a slew of money that is coming out of corporate coffers into elections. They don't even bother to make contributions to the candidates because, according to the court, they have free speech like people, and therefore they can run their own campaigns, and they can spend as much as they want, and there's no limitations on what they spend. And not only that, the corporations can be foreign owned. They have the right now to participate in our elections. Hartman analyzes the whole thing. It's really well done, what he's done in this book. It really is. I invite people to read it. Don't accept that this is the end-all be-all, but read it. Take a critical look at it, because he touches all this stuff. He has been at this long enough now to where he can speak eloquently, not just to the problems with the Supreme Court, but to the problems with Congress, to the problems with the political system, to the problems with healthcare, to the problems with economic injustice, to what created the middle class, to why we go through these 80-year cycles in which we have this big crash that comes. And this is one time in which, unfortunately, unlike the Depression, which was about 80 years ago, we're not going to extricate ourselves out of, because the economic royalists have made this coup with the Supreme Court.
So,
I could go on and on.
From what you're saying, it seems like it's almost an impossible task to take on the economic royalists and succeed and have our voices govern us. Now, what do you think about this sign?
Oh, I like that sign.
With what's going on nowadays, do you think that sign would be of any help? What would Jesus do?
My partner is always her father.
Kathy?
Kathy. Her father is a follower of Rush Limbaugh. It's very, very, very sad. Mm-hmm. He's 96 years old. He's blind now. He lost his sight to macular degeneration. He listens to radio shows, and Rush has become preoccupant in his mind. And sadly enough, Kathy, she loves her dad, and she has conversations with him almost every day. Mm-hmm. He lives in New York, and they talk over the phone. And they get, Kathy is not like you and I, a follower of Rush Limbaugh. Limbaugh is very low on my list. I mean, he's way low on my list. And so
Arnie likes him.
Yeah, I have questions for him then. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that she'll get into these awful arguments. Oh, God, they're awful arguments. And they usually end up with her asking him, "Where's your son?"
Is that the one?
What would Jesus do? I like that one.
I have more fun with this sign in the markets and in the shopping places like that, because people are wondering what's behind me, because those few who know me know I'm a radical leftist progressive.
Right.
So what am I having about that? So what Jesus would do would be the same things that Gandhi would do, or
and
Martin
the same
Luther
thing
King
that Hartman
would do.
is proposing to do. Throw the money changers out of the temple.
But he could do that because he didn't have the sophisticated methods and derivatives and all that kind of stuff that we have nowadays. So what can we do as individual citizens to stop this madness that we're heading toward, the destruction of the earth itself?
I'm pretty depressed about things, because frankly, I think things are going to crash before they get better. I think we are. We're on that trajectory. We have not, been able to use the opportunities that we've had to take ourselves out. Well, it's kind of like my idea about truth. Truth exists outside of yourself, if it's truth. That's in my mind the way it works. Sure. And so I think that because we have not made the corrections that we needed to make when we had the first crash that happened here in 2008, we're going to be in a much worse one. And at the point that we get into and we have a number of things that are happening at the same time. We have the fossil fuel industry attempting to propagandize the issue of climate change, destroy science, all so they can make a buck. And because of it, what's going to happen is we're going to see tipping points. We're starting to see it in the Arctic already. There's a lot of meltdown going down in the Arctic, and the meltdown in the Arctic is going to release all that methane that's been stored, not only frozen in the cathrates underneath the water, but also that's stored in the permafrost.
Yes.
And that's all going to go up into the atmosphere. The methane, which is, by the way, a better greenhouse gas than the carbon dioxide is, that's going to exacerbate the problem to the point where we're seeing, like for instance, right now as we speak, in Australia, there is a drought going on in Australia that is so severe that it's up to 123 degrees in Fahrenheit in heat in some places. There are fires burning all over in Australia. And, in the United States, we have a drought now that extends from where the old Dust Bowl took place in Texas and Oklahoma and so on. It's now extending into California, up into Northern California. They've been having problems with forest fires right now, and this is supposedly the wet season.
And that's a result of climate change?
And that's a result of climate change and all that. What the headlines on the drought in California is California is the breadbasket for this country. I mean, there's a lot of food that's grown down in California. If you make the land so that you can't farm it and you can't harvest the food that's grown, what's going to happen? Prices of food are going to go up. There's going to be food shortages, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we're dealing with it. I mean, we're going to deal with it. And I think when you start having that serious of a reality to confront in your life, you're going to start thinking about how the hell you got there, and think to yourself, maybe the time's come for me to stand up and do something about it. And that, I think, is what Hartman is appealing to. He's saying, listen, we know what the solutions are. The solutions, he spells out all kinds of various things that can be done to make things better.
What can ordinary citizens do?
Well, what ordinary citizens can do is, like on a local, think locally, act globally. On a local level, you've got to put your survival mechanism into place. That's why I garden now, partially why I garden, because I mean every bit of food that I grow is not food that I have to depend on from somebody else, and I know how I got there, because I've been doing it. Now, am I self-sufficient? No, I'm not self-sufficient. But I saved, even though the county forced me to tear down my home, which I hate, and I'm no longer living in my little trailer anymore, I saved up all those photovoltaic panels. They're all there. If I can put it back together, I'm going to put it back together. I mean, just because I have my little setback doesn't mean that I'm not going to keep what I think is important for survival.
There's no such thing as a setback for you. Artie's champing at the bit again. What do you got for us, Artie?
Well, as I was thinking about what you're talking about, I was thinking about what was in the paper about the Boeing workers.
Yes.
Comment about that.
Well, I think it's outrageous. I mean, here, the Boeing workers have lost their pension plan. Pensions all over are being, and you of all people, Christ, you're coming out of Detroit. Detroit, look at the devastation that's happened to Detroit. It's awful what's going on. It's just awful. And not only that, you got people being appointed by the governor to overrule the Democratic elected people who live in Detroit. I mean, that's outrageous. It's just outrageous what's happening. And again, the economic royalists, they don't care. They're out to get all these globalized free trade agreements so that, they can operate as transnationals and have no allegiance at all to the earth or to any particular country or the well-being of people that live in it. It's all going to be dollars and cents underneath the new economic plan. The trade agreements have their own courts. They've got courts now that can overrule countries. Democracy is taking a walk in this, taking a beating.
Shall we go back like in the 60s and 70s and wear protest signs and march and demonstrate?
Sure, I do. You know what I've been doing? I mean, it's nothing. I mean, it's like Gandhi saying, do the insignificant, even though it doesn't mean anything, it still means something. I mean, I go and I do a peace vigil every week in Estacada. I go stand on the street corner and hold a sign, get the troops out of, stop these foreign wars that we're in, etc. Does it make a difference? It's amazing. I always thought Estacada was this right-wing community, and there's a lot of people that, give us the heads up, the thumbs up, they give us peace signs as they drive by. I don't know. I love it when I see a little kid in back of a car, parents look like they're probably, arch conservatives, and this kid's sneaking a peace sign up to the window, just because I'm standing out there on the corner. I like it.
Go ahead, Artie.
I want to follow up on Boeing, and
please do.
just add a couple of tidbits. The paper said that 21 states were competing with the state of Washington for the factories of Boeing, and it struck me that we're having like this economic civil war between these right-to-work states and states with some legacy of unionization. It has nothing to do, that particular microcosm has nothing to do with international trade as it does have to do with the states fighting with each other.
That's true too.
And what then the result was that the 21 states who were going to give a better deal to the factory with tax abatement and other concessions meant that the union had to almost rubber stamp what the factory in Seattle was offering.
Right.
And as an example, I flew into Charleston, South Carolina recently, and on the airport in Charleston, South Carolina, is a Boeing factory. What in the heck is Boeing doing running a factory in Charleston, South Carolina? Well, they're a right-to-work state.
That's what I was going to say.
They're paying a minimum wage for industrial workers who in Seattle have bargained for a middle-class lifestyle.
Arnie, don't call it right to work, call it right to exploit. That's what the hell it is. They're the ones that have given us this definition. When you say right to work, it sounds like, oh, that state is supporting the people right to work. That's not true. It's the right to exploit. That's what they're doing. Keep the unions out, keep people at the poverty level, compete, for what little scraps they're willing to give you. This is outrageous. It's outrageous what's happening to us. We got to turn it around. We got to.
Question again. What can individual citizens do beyond the stuff that Hartman is talking about?
Just keep on keeping on. That's basically it. Keep on demanding justice. Keep on trying to elect the right people. Support the Move On organization to take away corporate personhood.
Okay.
Now get Hartman's book. It talks about all this
Hartman's
stuff.
book, yeah.
The Crash of 2016. Get it. Read the book. It's got all kinds of great ideas.
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you about worldview.
Okay.
Worldview. Now, I'm going back to Boeing. It's an article that was just in the paper. I've got it in my papers tonight. And they are unprecedented right now, unprecedented orders. More orders than they've ever had.
Right.
My question to you is and so there's going to be tremendous profit. The stock has doubled to $142 a share.
Right.
In a year. What I want to know from you is, what is it in the mindset of the capitalist? What is it in the mindset of the bosses that would bring to the table an offer that was so anti-union when they're making so much money? The article said it's not like a bankrupt city like Detroit fighting for their pensions. It's not like a marginal corporation. It is one of the world's most productive corporation with the world's most productive workers. And yet they're losing their pensions too. And that was what the big fight was. And they didn't have any ability to fight the corporation. What is in the head of the big corporate industrialists that they would do that to the people? And I hearken back to Henry Ford and his $5 a day labor. He took these poor people out of Eastern Europe and he paid them a living wage.
Right.
What is it about this situation with Boeing?
Well, I think that greed is a disease. It's like an addiction. It's like, I don't know why Boeing doesn't. I know where you're coming from, because you think to yourself, these workers have spent their life being loyal to Boeing. They have learned skills that they have honed over time, which allows them to make the best and safest components for these airplanes that they are building. Somebody in Boeing has got this sickness where they're saying, geez, it's not enough. Let's cream these employees so we can take it from them as well. I don't understand it. Why is it that there's an effort to do away with pensions? Seems to me a pension is a good idea, where you help people put away money so that after they have served that time working for you, they're able to live, and while they're living, they'll be consuming, and that makes the economy pump. No. All of a sudden now, pensions are no good. And what we got to have is these 401k plans. And what's that? That's the stock market. That's right. And not only that, the stock market, you're captive of it. If it goes down, there went your savings that you might have had. That's why they want to do away with Social Security. They want to make Social Security is a pension. That's what it is. I put money into that plan to get that money back now that I'm 67 or going to be 67 years old. I want it to be there. And not only that, I'll do my best to continue to consume. I got to eat every day anyway. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't understand why all of a sudden I got to play this casino capitalism to be alive.
I can guess why.
Because there's people make shitloads of money off of us.
Original sin.
Yeah, there you go.
It seems the human species.
Where's that sign you got? The Jesus sign?
It's like humans are born with this genetic flaw, which is an original sin, that says they're not okay unless they're better off than fellow humans.
It's sad.
And there's a name for it. It's greed.
Greed.
But the problem is with that, they never get enough.
I'm dealing with it in my family. Let me tell you. I mean, my mother is 93 years old. She inherited some property in Texas when her father died, along with her brothers and sisters. And an oil company now wants to come in and drill on this property.
We have a couple of minutes.
My brother called me up and said, "This is happening. You and I and your sister inherit this property." And I said to him, if I have any power in this, I will refuse to allow the land to be drilled, and because of my concerns about global warming. So what happened? My brother got my mother's will and rewrote it, and now her little estate that she's got is concentrated into his hands. He doesn't need it. He's rich. He's a rich man. He doesn't need it. He's full of greed. And it breaks my heart. I mean, I come tonight to this show with a broken heart, watching this shit go down.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in a civil war in this country. We are going to be in a civil war. It's going to divide families. And the sad part about it is it's because we have to contend with people who are sick. I mean, what does a billionaire need another billion for?
He's got the original sin in spades. Now, time is running out, so how about a final thought or a message for our viewers from my two wonderful guests? Who's going to go first, telling the viewers what it is they should think about or dwell on?
Can I go, Arnie? Is that all right? Because you're going to be on. I'm just going to say this. Read The Crash of 2016 and ask yourself the question that Dr. Don wants you to answer. What would Jesus do?
Thank you. Arnie.
I'm going to be on another show, so I will defer to the master.
I appreciate you. You
Thank
ask
you.
good
Well, it's
questions.
been very illuminating to me, and I really appreciate what you were saying. Absolutely. Pleasure.
Be well, brother.
You two are a delight. And
Well, thank you, Dr. Don.
think about how soon you're going to be on again when you settle that
I got to read another book.
difficulty. You don't need another book, Lord. You don't need any of this stuff at all. And you I got more for you later on. You want to do some PSAs, Mr. Director? So there's a broadcast schedule for people in Washington County, Oregon. Yes?
Can I say something? If anybody would like to get a hold of me, please contact me by email or by phone. You know, I have an email list that you can be on. So just wanted to say that.
Of course,
short
yes.
little spiel.
And that's been up on the screen for you. So next PSA we have Mr. E. To watch my shows on the web, Google Don Baham YouTube, and there's hundreds of shows on there and all kinds of characters I've interviewed, including people like these, but not too often. And musical, we got to tell you about the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, easy for me to say. Join the ACLU, because without the ACLU, our civil liberties would be further down the tube than they are right now. And we got to end corporate personhood. Lord, go to moveToAmend.org, amend the Constitution so that corporations are not considered persons or human beings. Do we have another PSA, Mr. E? Yeah, they're playing with the controls in there. The Alliance for Democracy, that's an excellent organization. It's a national organization. There's also a local chapter, and they work very hard at social justice and having our government speak for ordinary citizens. Yep, and watch the Populist Dialogues. My friend David Duck, who runs that operation.
Wonderful man.
Wonderful man, David
Wonderful
Duck. Thank
man.
you, David, for being who you are. And what else we got? Oh, I got to tell you to remember KFC, not Kentucky Fried Chicken. Dr. Don's KFC, kind, friendly, and charitable.
I like it.
Kind, be friendly, and be charitable. To you, Arnie, and to you, Lord, and to you, and you, especially you. Thanks again for watching. See you next time.